Therapy is more process and it's more relational. You're not going to come in and be like, here's what's happening and here's what I need you to fix. Because it's not on me to fix it. But at the end of the day, the responsibility still lies on you as the client for doing the work.
How can someone get the most out of therapy?
Part of it is finding someone whom you connect with, show up a few sessions and kind of feel that out. Go in, be open and be willing to learn and engage, go into hard places.
When it comes to people switching therapists, when is a good time to switch therapists?
Let's say you uncover grief and that person isn't specialized in grief, then say, hey, do you have any referrals for someone who does? Because I want to start moving in this direction. Instead of, I don't want to hurt their feelings, I'm just going to ghost. And then they're left to wonder, are they okay? Was it something I said? And there's just and it happens, but it's so much good can come from having that hard conversation and then allowing the professional to be like, oh yeah, let me give you the great referrals. I love this person. They're great at this, blah, blah, blah.
Ghosting just in general is just not fun, which unfortunately I partake in ghosting therapists in the early stages, but I have a podcast now. So all is well. Crystal, thank you for being here again.
Yes.
Today, we want to talk about just how to get the most out of therapy. And there's a reason why, this conversation is happening today, because one of my cousins, I'm not going to go deep into, because his story is his story. But he's been having a lot of questions about therapy. And I figured we should share, how do you get the most out of therapy? Maybe there's 5 or 10 things that we can kind of go over.
Sure. I think part of it is finding someone whom you connect with. And being willing to show up a few sessions and kind of feel that out. If it feels too structured, not structured enough, if you don't feel like there's kind of this nice ebb and flow, it could be it's just not the right fit, and be willing to have that conversation and then look for someone else. And then the idea of are you open to homework and kind of doing things in between sessions, and then recognizing that you might find immediate benefit, and then you might find there's a lull, and then you might find that the process takes time.
Right.
And so no one ever likes to take time on anything. And so that's hard to kind of embrace, but yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to my own personal story, maybe there's someone out there watching this and they're in the process of online trying to figure out how can I get my girl back, and they see this video pop up. What would you want to tell them? Someone who went to therapy because they want to get something out of it. Maybe this could be a significant order that they're afraid of losing. What would you tell them?
Yeah. So that seems very outcome based. I'm here because if I do this, then I get X in return. And it doesn't always work that way. So you need your motivation to be about you and have that be your primary motivation. And then say a potential outcome is that I change the way that I operate, behave, relate, and show up in relationships, which then allows someone to want to keep me or bring me back or whatever. But that solely doing it for them won't stick for very long because you're not really internalizing. You're not really doing it for you. There's just this motivating factor that's taking you. And then once you get it, why keep going?
Right. Huh. Yeah. I was the guy who spent 6 months just, I was like, why is she trying to ask me about my past? And I remember, my first ever therapist, bless her heart, I was as stubborn as a rock. And I was like, I don't care about my past. This girl is leaving and I don't want her to leave. What can I do to make sure that I can keep this relationship going? And now I have a podcast about mental health. So thanks to all the therapists that I had the opportunity to talk to. So I want to break each step. Do you have a certain amount of things that you want to share with people that we can break down one by one? I remember you talked about the first steps being open.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely come in, and I think there's a level of guardedness because you're walking into a stranger's office whom you've never met before, and you're going to share things that you barely tell the people who are closest to you. And so that's awkward in and of itself. But yeah, come in with a level of openness of okay, this person is not meant to judge me. They're not here sitting across from me being oh, wow, you a mess, or whatever. Right. But it's go in, be open, and be willing to learn and engage, go into hard places. Yeah.
So I do want to maybe now would be a good time to define what is therapy, because I feel like people go to therapy, but sometimes they try to compare it as going to go see a doctor. Because I feel like going to see a doctor, healthcare worker, is very outcome based. The symptoms are very physical.
Sure.
most of the time. Sometimes it could be like an internal thing, but most of the time it's like a physical thing. A doctor can tell, all right, this is what's wrong. Here's medication, rest, go home, drink water, sleep, whatever. But when it comes to therapy, it's totally different. I feel like there's so many different, like ways to go about therapy, and there's so many different ways to go about it in general. And I want to kind of like define what is therapy, so that we can identify healthcare, like outcome based, and then therapy itself.
Yeah, I would definitely, in comparison to that, therapy is more process and it's more relational. And so you're not going to come in and be like, here's what's happening and here's what I need you to fix. Because it's not on me to fix it. I'm here to help guide. I'm here to help equip. I'm here to help provide insight, create space, all those different things. But at the end of the day, the responsibility still lies on you as the client for doing the work.
Right. And like how much earlier you like talked about homework, and I think you lost so many people. When well, like when you say doing the work, what exactly does that mean? Because I have a different definition, and luckily I had a really good therapist that kind of helped me, kind of help me identify what that looks like, which I would like to share here. Yeah. But in your own space, like what does doing the work means? Yeah.
So you're only in a session, again, if you're in it once a week, it's 50 minutes to an hour per week, maybe every other week, depending on how often you go. So not a lot can happen in that 50 minutes to an hour.
Right.
And so a lot of the bulk happens outside of the session. So you talk about certain things in session and then you leave and you think about what was talked about. So like it could be a perspective shift. It could be about, okay, they challenged the way that I thought about this. Let me see if I can continue that way of thinking. It could be about recognizing and observing when you like shame spiral, when you're triggered. And so it's observing all of those things. Sometimes it incorporates journaling. Sometimes if you don't like journaling, it can just be about, let me just jot some of these notes down in my notes app, like real quick or whatever. But it's this process of, I need to think about what was discussed and then what was challenged in me and how I can incorporate that outside of therapy.
Right. It sounds so like intentional. And I know we're like in a time where, there's so much going on in like like an individual's life to a point that, how do you make sure that they actually want to collaborate with you? Let's say someone goes to therapy today and they have all these things going on. How do you kind of like ground them and then help them collaborate with you through the process?
Yeah. And I think, like you can definitely tell the difference between someone who's not quite in a stage of change where they're ready. So there's like the stages of change, and one of them is like pre-contemplation. And so that means that I think I'm ready, but I'm not really sure. And so they're not convinced that doing the work will even do anything. And then once they get past pre-contemplation, then they're more engaged and willing to be like, oh yeah, I recognize that I have all of this work that I need to do. And you're just kind of helping me set the guideposts, if you will. And so kind of ask your question again. I kind of lost my train of thought.
So like when it comes to like therapy in general, I feel like a lot of people are dealing with so many things in their life, like bills, life, family, whatever. And it sounds like there's so much intentionality and like collaboration required into the process itself. How do you make sure that, the patients actually understand the amount of work required, but then also the intentionality, and then also the collaboration piece, because it's a very big piece. Because in healthcare, sometimes, people just go in and they just let go and let the doctors deal with everything. Yeah. But in therapy, since it's your mind, it requires more collaboration between the the patient and the therapist. Yeah. How do you guys prepare for that?
Yeah. So the collaboration part, again, goes back to the openness. It goes back to intentionality, and also knowing that if you don't do work in between, you'll be in therapy much longer, which, I mean, is fine if that's what they want, but the process will be extended for a larger period of time because you're not doing like kind of that necessary grunt work in between sessions, and you're expecting a lot out of a 50 minutes to an hour per week.
And with me, when I was going to therapy, it was really hard for me to like, sit there and like, because I'm just like, I don't know how to do that, because that's not how I was raised. I was never given the agency to like talk back. So I was mainly quiet for a very long time. And I remember my therapist would tell me to go home and then actually record a video of myself and then talk about what I got from that session and then bring it the next time. So I'll literally go home And I was like, this is stupid. And I'm like talking to myself, and then I will like just kind of like go back to the session. I'm saying, she said X and Y. It kind of reminded me of something that happened a long time ago. And I started calling my mom. Did this actually happen? And she was like, yeah, are you okay? Did you hit your head? I was like, probably. Like, so to me, I feel like that helped me a lot because, I had to get out of the traditional way, because everything I do has always been around video film. So to me, that made sense. To just sit there and do my own video of myself, and then I'll show it to her the next day. The next session. And she was like, this is really good.
Yeah.
I have so much feedback. And she would actually tell me based on my facial expression, and she'd go even deeper into like how she felt about the way I say certain things. And she would ask me more questions about that, which was fun. I genuinely enjoyed that, and that's why I actually stayed going. But have you had something similar in your experience as a therapist where you have to like go out of the traditional way in order to meet someone where they're at?
I think that's cool because she recognized that, like, again, you speak through film, and so she basically, that was your journal.
Wow. Okay.
So instead of writing it down, she asked you to video it, and that spoke to you, and so you did it. So I love that. That's awesome.
I know. I'm
sounds like a great therapist.
Yeah. I'm so used to just editing videos of other people and like cutting stories so I can hear things that a lot of people can't hear. So to me, that made so much sense to the point that I was like, wow, okay, this is pretty cool. I do want to talk about the vulnerability aspect of it. Because, for example, this conversation started because my cousin in the military, he's asking me all these questions about what is therapy? What do I do when I go to therapy? Do I talk? Do I, like, he's so confused. Like, even the virtual aspect, how is this going to work? But he doesn't like to share what he went through. And I want to understand on the vulnerability piece, how can someone have grace towards themselves going to therapy and realizing that things happen, to me in my past. And, even though sometimes those things can be very horrible, how can they make sure that they don't go into therapy with so much guilt already and shame, which I see all the time?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll show up with guilt and shame. And that's kind of part of the reason of being in that space with someone, allowing them to witness your stories, see you in it. And then it's not like when it's witnessed, that reduces the shame, because shame doesn't like light. And Brene Brown talks about that. And so the more you expose the light to it, the less big it becomes in your mind. And then you can reduce the guilt and shame over time.
That's like literally how cameras work.
Yeah.
Wow. The more light you expose, the better it captures the image. Wow. Okay. I see that.
Yeah.
But like, let's say now a client, I know us humans beings, we have a lot of expectations when we go into things. Do you like come across that during session? Like someone shows up and they have their own expectation of what the session should even look like, like, etc.
Yeah.
Like, how do you guys handle that?
Yeah. So sometimes you'll have people who are very eager and who are very type A, and they're like, okay, I want to come in. I have these, symptoms, if you will. I have these things happening. Okay, now you tell me what to do. And so,
is that a good thing or bad thing?
Well,
I guess
it's funny because it feels very like, hey, here's all my problems. Let me hand them to you, and you again script it out for me on how I like move through all of this.
Yeah.
Which
it
again,
sounds exhausting.
It is part of it because there is conversation, but that's where the collaboration piece I think comes back to, is where I'm not going to be like, okay, you do A and then you do B. I'm not going to tell you to do that because that's not my role. But we can sit here and say, what if you tried A? Oh, A doesn't work. Okay, what about D? Have you thought about this? And so it's like this conversation, and then skills are happening as you take this conversation and kind of move forward.
Huh. Well, I'm not that guy. I usually just show up and I'm saying, hey, all right, what are we doing today? Which, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. I guess it like depends on the person. Have you ever had to deal with someone, and I'm saying deal because it's just a lack of a better word, but I don't mean like you're dealing with someone, because this is something that you want to do and you care about, obviously. But like, how do you go about when someone wants to quit? Let's say this is something that I did. I quit before my first years of going to therapy, because I was like, I'm not getting my girl back anytime soon. Let me leave this and go figure it out. But like, how do you deal with that or like go about it? Let's say someone wants to quit.
Yeah. So if they're willing to have that conversation and they don't just ghost, which is again ideal,
Yeah.
I go back and say, okay, let's go back to where we started. So this is when you came in and this is what you said you were going through. Let's go through and say, are any of those things resolved? Do you feel better in any type of way? And are there any of those things that we haven't touched on? And generally, when you do that process, it's like, oh, yeah, we didn't even go to this. Or, oh, I forgot about that. Or this resolved itself as we talked about this. And so that's always a good review. And then I'll say, okay, well, since it's not as like, I'm trying to think of the right word, like necessary to come in, like you don't feel like I need this right now, let's scale it back. What if we move to every other week, every 3 weeks, once a month, and then we can be more targeted, and then you can do and focus on what you want to focus on in between sessions. And then as things continue to get better or whatever life circumstances shift, we can then adjust over time.
Right. Huh. Wow. Okay. Well, I genuinely ghosted, so that's why I'm stuttering. I was like, this is not working. Oh man, that's bad. Yes, I was the one who ghosted. I have no words except I'm sorry if you happen to be watching this.
Well, it's funny because like I think that's the way of people do it now. People want to avoid hard conversations, or even thinking if I want to quit, I'm hurting your feelings. Like saying like you're bad at your job.
No, I'm lying. I genuinely was overwhelmed, and I was like. And then the reason why I left is because I remember at some point in therapy, she started going to my childhood, and then we started talking about my parents. And to me, I was like, no, that's not why I'm here. And I'm saying, I don't even know this lady. Why am I telling her all this? And then I just like never showed up because I was genuinely overwhelmed. I'm just like, this is too much.
Yeah.
And like, let's say someone found themselves in that position. What can you say to them to make sure that they don't ghost?
Yeah. And I think that probably means like maybe you weren't yet ready or equipped to go there or understood why it was necessary or important. And so then it's about like, okay, I left last session very overwhelmed and this is how it led to my week. And I feel now worse than when I started 3 months ago or whatever,
Exactly.
which again is sometimes normal because you get into some deep, hard things and you're going to feel and like, yeah, but it's okay. Let's not go to that subject for a while. Let's talk about these things that are more pressing. And then when you feel more equipped or even have more capacity to handle more heavy things, then you can revisit it. But it's like being willing to say, I know this has to be hard and I know this is going to be challenging, but I did not feel right at the end of last session. I don't want to feel that way in that way again, or I don't feel ready. And then being willing to say, yeah, absolutely. It's you know, like I like trust your experience that you're having and I don't want you to feel that way.
Right.
And so then shifting.
So like as a therapist, how do you guys, like are able to identify that early on so that you can like intervene? Because I do like public speaking. I don't know why these people keep hiring me. But, if you're watching it, keep hiring me. but like I like talk about the 3 C's of like retention, meaning 3 C's of like why people stay in a company. Number 1 is like clarity. Number 2 is communication, and number 3 is capacity, which you kind of literally touched on here.
Yeah.
And I feel like that also happened on the the patient side. I feel like if they don't get clarity or, they feel like they're not being communicated or communicating effectively, vice versa. Or number 3, now they're overwhelmed because they're out of capacity. They tend to leave. In your own experience as a therapist, how do you see that play out in my own little, speaking equations that I do?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's beautifully well said. And I hope that people will have that conversation in the room because there's so much good and healing that can take place when someone can be like, hey, this doesn't feel clear. I don't feel like I'm communicating effectively, or I just feel completely overwhelmed because there's something happening there. And if you don't allow yourself to move through that, pivot, shift in some way, that will continue to be a pattern. And so you'll get into a hard situation and you'll feel something similar and then you'll just leave.
Right.
And then you never get to see the magic of like, what's on the other side of that? Or like, how do I break that pattern?
Right. Huh. Well, with me, luckily, my passion for this individual back then was so strong. I was like, I need to find another therapist. So like, when it comes to people switching therapists, when is a good time to like switch therapists?
I mean, I think it differs. So in the beginning, if you're not feeling the click, I call it that just because it feels like a good connection or not. I would say, and again, like recognize that you're sitting across from a professional adult who like, even if they do get their feelings hurt, like it'll be okay. Like and you can be like, hey, you seem great, but also like, I kind of want to try something different or a different approach or whatever. And so like allow them to give you referrals and to have that hard conversation. So in the beginning, if you don't feel it, and then also if you feel like you've been working for a while and it feels repetitive or you're not going to a deeper place, or maybe there's an issue, like let's say you uncovered grief and that person doesn't specialize in grief, then say, hey, do you have any referrals for someone who does? Because I want to start moving in this direction. Or maybe it's trauma. Maybe that person doesn't specialize in trauma, and saying, hey, do you have any referrals? I'd like to try EMDR or whatever. And so then it's, can you offer me referrals because I want to meet with someone who specializes in this? Okay. And it's like, instead of, I don't want to hurt their feelings, I'm just going to ghost. And then they're left to wonder like, oh no, are they okay? Like, was it something I said? And there's just like, and it happens, but it's like so much good can come from having that hard conversation and then allowing the professional to be like, oh yeah, let me give you the great referrals. I love this person. They're great at this, blah, blah, blah.
I mean, like at the end of the day, like therapists are human. So ghosting just in general is just not fun, which unfortunately I partake in ghosting therapists in the early stages, but I have a podcast now. So all is well. So like, I know there are some people that fall into that category of like, people pleasing, and you know they may be seeing a therapist for a very long time, but they're afraid to switch.
Sure.
How can that individual go about, you know, maybe not ghost, but trying to figure out how to communicate that and be like, hey, I don't think this is working. I think it's time for me to go. But they're already struggling with the people pleasing. Yeah,
I think it's about maybe touching base with the goals and saying, hey, these are some new goals that I have. And I've done a little bit of research. I'd love to add, you know, any referrals that you have, but I think I want to pivot in this direction. Like, I'm so grateful for me even getting, you know, just kind of show appreciation for the, you know, the story that you've created together so far, but then say like, here's what I want to move towards. Right. And then do your own research, ask for their referrals, and just know like it's a service that you're paying for. And so like you get to direct what you want out of it. And so if it's not working, you don't have to be rude about it, but it's like, hey, can you help me move in this direction? And I think this is the way I want to go. And if they're like, I don't agree, I mean, then you can be like, okay, well, I think this is what I want. And so like, again, I really appreciate what you've done, but I'm going to move in this direction now. Yeah. Well, I bless their hearts, because I know, this is hard. My wife tend to fall into that category. Just over the weekend, we had a conversation where, you know, she has this tendency to just like answer real fast. And usually puts me into all of these programs that I'm not even aware of. Over the weekend, her sisters came, and I know they listen to this podcast. I love y'all. But I remember we had like a whole Saturday plan, and I heard her saying, oh yeah, she was like, yeah, I'm down. And I literally text her, no, you're not. We'll be out from 10 a.m. all the way to 6 p.m. And I need a 2-hour rest. And I remember like reading that, and I was like laughing so much. And I was like, wow, okay. Like, how do you communicate with someone that now I'm kind of leaving the therapist world a little bit, but let's say now, you know, there's a hypothetical person, not my wife, but hypothetical person who is struggling with that. How can people in their life support that while they're going to therapy? Yeah, I think it's part of recognizing that you can't control like disappointment on the other side. So like if you're afraid of saying no or afraid of not being down or whatever, it's like, oh, they might be disappointed. But that's okay. Like it's okay for them to have that feeling on the other side of like, whatever you're saying. Yeah, no that's to. Okay. That's actually like hit me. I should say that to her more often, because I know sometimes how hard it is for her to say no to things. Yeah. She like genuinely feel bad. Yeah. She's like all like frantic, like trying to make sure everyone is okay. Yeah. But yeah, thank you for that. Yeah. Just kind of putting language around that. That's okay. So I want to shift to the right brain a little bit, you know, for the people that are more like practical, like my cousin, who's always telling me like from A to Z, how does it look like? He wants to know all the little micro, you know, like details of going to therapy. Because to him, it's like, I wake up, if I'm not feeling good and I can't take myself to the hospital, I can call 911 and someone will come pick me up. Sure. I can go into the window, check in, and then give him my insurance card. If I don't have insurance, they'll still see me, take me to the nurse to check my vitals. From there, and then I go, the doctor shows up at 5-10 minutes, actually never 10 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, and tell me, hey, blah, 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 you can go home or stay over.
in like therapy, how does that play out from A to B? Let's say when does someone actually identify that maybe I need to go, it's time for me to go see a therapist?
Yeah. So if you're feeling like, okay, I feel stuck or I feel this certain type of way, I've been recommended therapy. Okay. So I find a therapist who I'm going to reach out to. So you're going to either reach out via email, like on their website or something like that, or you might call. You'll have a conversation with them. And say like, okay, even how does this conversation feel on the phone? Does it feel like a good back and forth? Are they answered my questions? And then if you like the way that the conversation sounds, you'll schedule. So then the way we work is after you schedule, we're going to send you a link to our private portal, which is where you fill out all your paperwork. And so then you're going to answer all the questions about like your history, what you want to work on, how you heard about us, all that. And then so you fill out the paperwork and then you come and to your first session, you arrive. You'll be greeted in like, waiting area, lobby, something like that. You'll be brought back. And the way that I do the initial first session is I first acknowledge, like, I know it's already hard enough to be here. I'm a stranger to you. You're going to share some things that you struggle to share with the people who know you the best. I get that. It's hard. And so I kind of normalize that right up front. I ask them how they're feeling about just showing up in general. Sometimes I get mixed responses. And then I go into like, if you're open to it, are you willing to share kind of your overall story? Tell me like what growing up was like, and then move into current. What does current life look like? What are the challenges that you're facing? And like, what direction are you wanting to move? Like, what do you want to see feel better in 3 months and 6 months? How would you know that you feel better? And so that first session is just a lot of information gathering, but it's also a way that they're like, oh, I've probably never really sat down and shared my story in a format like this. And so it's actually really nice, even though it feels kind of weird. And sometimes if people are like, go right into the story, I might say like, so if they pause and like, oh, is that enough? I might be like, oh, so tell me, do you have siblings? Or like, oh, how is the school environment for you? Or like, are your parents still together? And so I'll ask kind of guiding questions if it feels like they're not going in like the story format. But generally that first session is just about information gathering and then finding out what are they experiencing and like where they want to go. And then sometimes homework is given of like, hey, I want you to think about these things or think about kind of like, these are the top 3 things that I want to see fixed the quickest. And then the next session is about kind of unpacking more of that. And then moving in the direction of like the goals that they have. And so in terms of frequency, at the end of the first session, I'll say, what were you thinking? Did you want to start off with once a week? Do you want to start off every other week? What makes sense financially? What makes sense in your schedule? And then I'll schedule it out. And then we just like move that over time. And sometimes people come pretty, religiously for 3 months, 6 months. Sometimes they go for a year, multiple years. It just depends on what they're wanting to work on, how much work they do in between. And yeah, like sometimes you get through something and then something new develops. And so then you move in that.
I'm going to go into just, like fixing because actually 2 sides to this question and hopefully it doesn't be a 20-minute long discussion. But I know that in my own personal life, I know a lot of people that go to therapy, especially friends that I talk to. This time, not my wife, but if like friends that I talk to, they will always tell me that they're going to therapy because their wife would recommend it or like it's something that they have to fix within themselves. And then on the other side, I know I have a lot of friends that are also they believe in like just reading a bunch of books. So they did like self-therapy on them. They've spent a lot of time reading. And sometimes when they talk, I'm just like, I think you still need therapy. Because it's like a self, thing where there's no feedback. You were just reading a book that's just confirming whatever bias you have. And you saw the title that confirmed your bias already, the subtitle. And you're reading that book and you find another book. The algorithm keeps telling you this book you need to read because your identity matches that you have online. And yeah, so I see these 2 things play out a lot in my friend group. And I kind of want to like talk about it. The first part, the fixing aspect of like people forcing someone else to go see therapists. What do you have to say about that? And like, how can someone not fall into that?
Yeah, I think it's probably out of good intentions, but the person who you're encouraging to go seek therapy, they have to get there on their own. Like they have to be willing to see the value. They have to be willing to like, oh, I have to show up here and be vulnerable. I have to do this hard work. And if, again, going back to how we started, if their motivation is simply to appease you,
Right.
like they're not going to stick with it. They're not really going to take it to heart. So it's, you can recommend it and then you can say, here's why I think it'd be valuable. And then be encouraging about that, but not put it in a timeline.
Right.
And so it's, again, giving the feedback, talking about the impact, and then allowing them to get there. So that could take a week, that could take a month, that could take way longer.
Right.
But it's not saying, hey, you need this, but it's like, hey, I think this could really benefit you. And here's how I think like you would really see the difference in your life, and allow them to eventually get on board with like, oh yeah, that sounds kind of nice. And then once they get there, then again, they're owning the process, which then when you own that, you're going to have much different results.
Gotcha. Jay, if you're listening, this is for you. Yeah, I know you listen, so it's going to be like, come on, man. And then the next one, I mean, I do a podcast, so whatever you tell me will probably come into the podcast if we're friends longer than 10 years, okay? That's the boundaries that I have. If I've known you longer than 10 years, I've known you enough to have you on my podcast and talk about it. So the other part is, I actually forgot. Do you remember by chance? We have the fixing and the people that read books.
Yes.
Like, what do you have to say about that? This is a big thing. That there's a big community of book readers that tend to like be so sure of who they are because of the things they read. And sometimes when I talk to them, I'm just like, you know what? I think it'll be nice to just go get feedback from someone else.
Sure.
But sometimes those discussions are so hard because they are like, no, I read this, and they can code every chapter, super smart, but it's so hard to talk to them. Like, what do you have to say about that? Maybe I'm judging a little bit, but yeah.
So I would first affirm, like, I love that you're seeking knowledge through those books and like how that's impacting you. And then challenge them to say, can you also find that what you're learning, you can share about it in a space and then have them be able to see it in a different way and say like, oh, I hear you're reading this, but how have you applied it? So yes, you may know the head truth, but has your heart and the way that it's like shown up in your behaviors, have you made that click?
Right.
And in therapy or in a space like that as a way for the head knowledge to be connected to the heart knowledge. And then also it sounds like maybe they connect intellectually. And so it's, can you go in and be like, hey, I just read this really great book. Here's what I got from it. Now I want to talk about like how I can like even more apply it. Not just, again, head know it, but like, how can I apply it? How can I make this like real for me?
My final question is, how exactly does self-care looks like for someone going to therapy? This is a question that my wife asks.
Yeah.
And, she's never been to therapy. Can you imagine? She's never seen a therapist. So she's also been asking a lot of questions.
Sure.
So this is hers.
Yeah. So I generally tell people, especially in the beginning, or if you know you're going to talk about something pretty heavy, if you can create space after the session. So like if you don't go immediately back to work, or if you create it towards the end of the day, where you have some sort of time in between showing up, that's ideal, because you could end it and feel more emotional or feel heavier, sometimes lighter, but that like just try to incorporate some time afterwards. That's not always the reality in the case, but try to create that space, and then just be like, again, going back to intentionality, recognize the foods that you're eating, how much activity your body's getting, how much sleep and rest you're getting. And you'll have every therapist you see remind you to be like, go and have fun, like do hobbies that you enjoy, create the space for that.
Right.
If you're a parent, don't allow parent activities to take over everything, like still do things that you enjoy. And so it's like recognizing that there's all these buckets I need to hit. And so it's food, sleep, water, rest, enjoyment, relationships, and like just create time, because that's going to help nourish you. It's going to help when you've done and said really hard things or sat in really big feelings and you have the space afterward. journaling's always good, but all of that is just super important because I mean, therapy's wonderful and so much life change is good, but there are days and weeks and times where it's just hard.
No, yeah. I mean, look at me, guys. I used to have a crazy stutter. Like it's just insane how whenever I would look at old videos of me talking, and I'm just like, wow, who's this guy? Like, this guy can't even talk. I would like literally roast myself because I'm like, I don't even remember. I felt like it was just like, like something that just got ripped out of my mind. Like I have to see it to remember that I was actually that.
Yeah.
I don't know if even that's a good thing to describe myself as that back in the day. But yeah, I mean, it was a very interesting time in my life, and that's why I'm such a big believer of therapy and just being an advocate for mental health now, because it genuinely works for me. It's like I don't know where my life would be if my ex back then didn't dump me and I decided to go see a therapist. And like years later, now I'm like in this space doing all this work around mental health. So again, thank you so much for coming in and helping us put language, because I know a lot of people are asking questions. So
yeah, for sure.
Do you have anything that you want to close out just as we wrap here?
Yeah, I encourage you to just find the right person that you look forward to going even when it's hard.
Right. Well, thank you so much. This has been fun.
Yeah.
All right.